Welcome, 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 everybody, to our 2025 forum. My name is James Cooper. I'm the President and CEO of Pleasanton Chamber of Commerce, and I'm really happy to see all of you here today. We are going to have as our speaker, Mr. James Paxson from Hacienda. I'm going to introduce him in just a moment. But first, what I'd like to do is give us a chance to go around the room and introduce ourselves. And we're going to go ahead and start on the screen. I'm sure we mostly know each other, but Brad, let's start with you.
My name is Steve Baker, and I'm running for governor of California.
Brad's on fire today.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Charles.
Well, I'm not running for anything, but Charles Grohair with Uncle Credit Union.
Thank you, James.
James Paxson, Hacienda.
Our guest speaker today. Herb.
I'm Brad Hurst, running for president of the Senior Living Group.
Ron.
It's good to be senior living.
I agree. I want to be like you.
Ron.
Ron Capella, Can-Am Plumbing, celebrating our 50th year in business this year.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Nice.
Wow.
Congratulations.
1972. First subdivision, Costanza Wilson in Union City.
That's correct, Brad.
Yeah, I was there.
Reed Phillips.
Good morning, Reed Phillips, Beats Hospitality Group. Hi, James.
Hey, Ray.
Hi, Reed.
And then Lori.
Lori Moffett-Felberg, Senior Vice President, Dahlin Group Architecture Planning, and also on the Chamber of Commerce Board. And I would normally be introducing James, but I've got a competing meeting in the background. So I'm going to let that go by. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Janine.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Janine Rubino-Brum, Pleasanton Unified Workability and Sunflower Hill. Hi, James.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Don. Don Martinez, if you can introduce. Don, you're muted. So Jamie, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Okay, now.
Jamie,
What'd you say?
can you introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Jamie Renton. I'm with Pleasanton Adult and Career Education. I'm the Adults with Disabilities paid transition specialist.
Thank you. And we have Don Martinez as well. Don is muted right now. So let's go around the room inside. I'll right across from you. Ken.
Good morning, Ken Norvell, CMIT Solutions and Pleasanton Chamber Board.
Nancy Harrington, Harrington Art Partnership.
I'm the real Brad Hurst, and I'm not running for anything. I'm sitting on the butt.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Wheeler, Black Tie Transportation and Pleasanton Chamber Board member.
Jan Natchler, retired.
And James Cooper, once again, President and CEO of Pleasanton Chamber of Commerce. Sapna, you just jumped in. Would you like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon. This is Sapna from First United Credit Union. I talk to James here and there quite often, so I just wanted to join and say, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Thank you for joining us, Sapna. Daniel Potts, would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, good morning, guys. This is Daniel Potts at Mirador Capital Partners. Hi, James.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Good to see you guys.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm going to move forward.
Don Martinez put something
Did Don
in the
put
chat.
something on?
Yeah,
Okay.
in the chat. He introduced himself.
Oh, okay. So Don, thank you for introducing yourself. Don Martinez, Director of Sales, Pleasanton Doubletree Hotel. So, nice to have you here. Nice to have everybody here. So thank you very much. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce our guest speaker today, who it sounds like most of you are familiar with. I have a bio I'm going to read for you. James Paxson has been employed with Hacienda for 37 years in various capacities and has served as its general manager since 1995. He currently manages all programs operated on behalf of investors and owners of property within Hacienda, including development and planning, infrastructure management, security, transportation, environmental monitoring, amenities, and community relations. Mr. Paxson also serves on the board of several local and regional organizations, including the East Bay Economic Development Alliance, the East Bay Leadership Council, Access Community Health Center, where he currently serves as the chair, Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance, and Three Valleys Community Foundation on the advisory board. Mr. Paxson has also served on and chaired the Pleasanton Chamber of Commerce, the City of Pleasanton EDC, which is the Economic Vitality Committee, the Tri-Valley Housing Opportunity Center, the Alameda County Measure B Citizens Watchdog Committee as an EDA appointee, and the Alameda County Workforce Investment Board. Mr. Paxson lives with his wife of 32 years, Kathy, and they have 2 children, Aaron and Sarah. So with all that being said, everybody, please welcome James Paxson.
Thank you. Hey, James, can I get screen sharing?
You should have it.
It says it's disabled.
Okay, give me a second. Let's see. I'm going to make you a co-host.
I will do a slow start just by way of saying it's a pleasure to be in front of all of you. I'm sorry it's not in person this afternoon. Here we go. Hold on just a second. All right, let me just get a little oriented here. There we go. Sorry, too many little windows here. Anyway, it's really a pleasure to be with you here. You are indulging one of my favorite things, which is getting a chance to talk about Hacienda a little bit. Especially amongst friends, I really appreciate this. There's a lot of interesting things that I'm going to try and cover this morning. My standard caveat for all these presentations is I'm a much better conversationalist than I am a presenter and lecturer. So in this case, you won't be able to throw anything at me, or you can throw something at the screen if you want. But please don't hesitate to interrupt and ask questions. I really want this to be a conversation and be able to kind of talk to you about things that are of interest. I am going to go over a little bit of some kind of current state of things, and then also talk about some trends that we see emerging, and we'll kind of take it from there. And then always, again, your questions, comments, and things that you're interested in are always good contributions to the discussion. So let's start off a little bit with today. Hey, it's our birthday. Oh my God, we're 40 years old. Now we're not 50. I know I've seen a lot of good 50-year anniversaries this year. We're celebrating our 40th. And one of the things that always happens with anniversary celebrations is you get a chance to reflect a little bit about sort of where you've been. I love history, and I love kind of having a sense of sort of where you came from, what you've done, and where you're going. And, certainly, anniversaries are an opportunity to kind of reflect on that a little bit further. We've got an amazing trove of information. And, just one of the things that always comes back to me when we're kind of having these sort of anniversary moments is how much Hacienda is not a product of one person or two people. It's really a product of the community, and everybody kind of really pulling together in order to make something tremendous happen. And again, time after time, I've witnessed that in the community in the Tri-Valley. It's something I always appreciate about working here. And it's something, in my 37-year tenure at Hacienda, it's something that's keeping me here. It's the fact that I get a chance to work with an amazing group of individuals to make things happen. Let's go into this. This is your grain of salt. And I would encourage you to reach out to the screen, pinch it, grab several of these. There's a lot of stuff that is in flux right now. We have gone through an unprecedented 3-year period of change and dynamics and the ground constantly shifting under our feet. And so there's a lot we don't know right now. And my personal opinion is it's going to probably take about 3 to 5 years, especially for us to really understand what's going to be the future of work and living, and how we sort of adapt to all the things that we've experienced over the last couple of years. You're going to see this reflected in a lot of things that I share by way of data, and also just by the way of some of the trends that we see happening right now. So again, grain of salt for your use today. first thing I always like to start off with, and most of you are familiar, I love this slide, but I think it's really kind of a good sort of place to kind of begin the discussion. Hacienda is a big thing. It's a big entity. As I always like to say, we're just larger than the city of Emeryville, and we're just smaller than the city of Albany. We're about a square mile and a half of development. And, literally, we function very much like a little city within a city. Our current population right now, we think, is probably around 16,600 employees. This has been one of those things where you got to use that grain of salt, because the ability to kind of collect information and really understanding what does an employee population even mean these days when you have people who are doing remote work. Is it the number of people who come in total? Is it the people there on average? We're still trying to figure this out ourselves and getting this information. We have some really, really good, reliable ways of collecting information and stats on Hacienda, but it's right now that's been thrown up in the air a little bit. By the way, I'm not able to see people raising their hands or enter stuff in the chat. So James, if I could call on you, if you can let me know if there's somebody who's got something that they want to ask a question about or interject anything, if you could let me know, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, James, I do have one point, which is that if you have a slideshow, it's not progressive.
Oh, hold on. Let me try this again.
I have the slideshow on this computer if you want me to pop it up.
Yeah, let's, can you see, what do you see?
There
What
we
do you
go.
see?
There you go.
Okay, got it.
Population.
All right, oh, well, then you missed my really great joke. So that's, hold on.
What's the grain of salt?
There's the grain of salt for you. I apologize. See, I thought I was being so clever too. Anyway, all right, there's our size, there's our population. Let's move on. All right. So existing development today, we have, and I've got this kind of broken out into three things to sort of think about. This right here, this column is what's actually on the ground today. Here's what's been approved but not built. And here's sort of what we think our future is at the current build out. So right now you can see in office, we've built about 5.5 million square feet. We have about 100,000 or so additional entitled square feet that we haven't built. We've got capacity to develop up to about 6.6 million. Flex R&D, about 1.4 million built. We think we'll probably see about 2 million on that. Retail, we've got about 1 million square feet today. The capacity is probably about leveled off where we're going to see it. We might see a little bit more. Warehouse, that's an interesting question. Right now, we only have, we got about 500,000 square feet of warehouse. We have some expansion capability there. Logistics is a very important emerging industry. And so consequently, there's, who knows, we may see some more of that, but not likely to see a whole lot. You're not going to see, a lot of big warehouse development probably in the future. Residential, obviously an evolving story and something that we're going to be talking quite a bit about over in the years and months to come. Right now, we have about 2,300 units. We're just about to break ground shortly after the first of the year on a 305-unit project that's going to be built by Avalon Bay. We're very excited about this. We actually got it entitled about 10 years ago, as Lori knows all too well. And we're just now getting it off the ground. Sometimes these things take time. In this particular instance, it's not, I would say this was more on the owner's side for the delay, not attributed to anything else.
This AT&T?
Yes, exactly. So this is the old AT&T site. It's now called Rosewood Commons. And so this project will be built on the western side of that project in the parking area, which is now a big parking field. With today's currently allowed development for residential, we can actually develop about 3,453 units. Now, this does not include the sites that are currently being evaluated in the housing element. That will add some additional units, still a little bit TBD as to how many more units that would provide. But we will definitely see some additional housing opportunities as a result of the housing element after it gets approved at the beginning of next year. The other thing that I always like to really emphasize about housing, we really look at housing as being something that's additive and not substituting office. I think it's been really important for us from a planning and design perspective that we want to look at integrative development. We're not looking at right now to replace office with residential. We want to have both because we think both are important. That's certainly been true up to the pandemic. Again, we'll see if the pandemic in the long haul changes things. But I think there is still a place for office, and I think there's a place for the other types of development that you see in Hacienda, and I don't see those going away anytime soon. Here's the good news with regard to our current occupancy. This is net absorption. That means, above the line is good, below the line is bad. Above the line means that we're taking in more than we're letting go, and that's certainly been the case so far for 2022. We're up about 38,500 square feet year to date. Right here, you can see some of our vacancy rate trends right here. This is kind of an abnormality that sort of skews the rest of the graph, unfortunately. We had to figure out some way to kind of rectify our resolution there. This is our warehouse space. This vacancy happened when Veritiv moved out of the warehouse, the large warehouse complex that we have. And so we saw a spike in our warehouse vacancy right there. This is really kind of where you want to be focusing. It's and more reflective of kind of the vacancy overall, which is around 12.5% in Hacienda right now. We're about 13.85% vacant in office, about 11% vacant in our flex space, and about a little over 8% vacant in retail. This is great news, and I'll tell you again, salt. We still don't know, some of the long-term changes that are going to happen as a result of the pandemic. But during the pandemic, the big fear was that we were going to see large losses in both office and retail, and it hasn't happened so far. And I think we're very fortunate. And in fact, as I go on and comment a little bit further, you'll see that there's been some really interesting things that have happened even in spite of the pandemic. And there's some good news stories here to kind of reflect on. This is our activity profile for the year. Very, 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 very consistent with previous years. And basically what this is saying is, in terms of the number of transactions, which is the gold bar, a lot of stuff happening in smaller spaces, a little bit, much less in medium-sized spaces, and just a few transactions in very large spaces. But the amount of space, which is the red bar, again, not so much happening. There's some activity. This is about 26% of the absorption for this year is happening in these smaller spaces. I'm sorry, this is about 16%, 26% here, and practically 50% plus in these larger spaces. And these are largely attributed to two very large leases that we executed within the last few months. One is with Unchained Labs. Very excited to be bringing them into the Shackley building, or what was used to be the Shackley building, no longer the Shackley building. And then another company called Vigaro, which has relocated out of Dublin. So right now, again, a little more salt here, but we've got some numbers that we can somewhat rely on. We are about 635 businesses. This is down for us. We were over 800 at one point. But in some respects, we've replaced smaller businesses with larger ones. Now, the percentages that you see down here are the gross square feet that's occupied by these different industries. And, as you've heard me say before, we are very blessed in the Tri-Valley to be able to support a large number of economic clusters. Generally in the East Bay, there's about 12 or so very large economic clusters that are prevalent in the East Bay. We have probably around 8 or so of those very strong in the Tri-Valley, and those are definitely reflected in the tenancy that we see in Hacienda. Just really quickly, and some interesting trends here to kind of remark on. Business services is kind of sort of an evolving category, but it's really people who are in the business of helping improve business process. And so you can, this used to be software development, but now it's become more specialized, and the development of business services is now more very industry specific and task specific. We've seen a lot of growth in this over the years, a little bit shaving off in this last year, lost about 0.5% of that. But again, it's still about 25% of our occupancy. Pure software development, those are just people who are coding. Again, still a pretty strong cluster for us, about 7.1%. That's actually a little bit up over the prior year. Consumer goods, been dropping for several years now. And this, again, is not retail itself, but the people who are in the business of retail, who have had offices within Hacienda and the Tri-Valley. So this has been trending downward, not quite as much of this as there has been in the past. Biomedical and or life sciences, here's one of the definite stories, definitely on the rise. And so we're starting to see more and more of these life sciences industries. We really think that is very much a part of what our future looks like. Insurance has been kind of wavering over the last couple of years, but it's still a fairly strong component of the occupancy within Hacienda. The one on here that I haven't listed, but we'll be talking about in just a little bit, is not so much life sciences, but the practice of health. So healthcare itself. This is a really interesting growing sector, and we also see that as a fairly strong component of our tenancy within Hacienda, and that doesn't appear to be going away either. In fact, we think that there may be some growth, and I'll have some more to say about that in just a minute. Here's one of the other really amazing stories of this last year. The amount of new investment coming into this, into Hacienda this last year has been not unprecedented, but it has been very, very strong. And we're very, very encouraged by what we see here. We have had 8 sales. You'll see 9 listings on here. One is actually a 2-parcel deal, which is for the new residential complex over at Rosewood Commons. But this is really, really, really good news. And let me tell you, folks, people do not make these types of acquisitions unless they have a strong belief in the local market and the ability to be able to do well in this area. And I would say that these sales are very, very strong indicators of that. And that's a really, really, really good thing. Let me point out a couple of them. This one up at the top is a fascinating sale, the Britannia Business Center 1, which sold at the beginning of the year to a fellow by the name of John Tarleton, who runs Tarleton Properties. Tarleton Properties specializes in life sciences. His whole reason for purchasing this building was to help to have a place for life sciences companies to go. This is not insignificant for several reasons. First of all, if you're going to be a life sciences landlord, you have to know the market. You have to know your tenants. There is an enormous amount of risk with life sciences companies, especially in the early stages. Their balance sheets look terrible. They have incredibly expensive tenant improvements. So if you're going to be building space and having life sciences tenants, especially in early stages, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to have a good track record. You have to be well financed, and you have to be pretty savvy about being able to spot people that you think are going to be able to be good tenants and not make you go broke. So we're very fortunate to have this type of investment within the area, because it really signals a strong belief in the market in this area, the emerging life sciences sector. And one of the things that John Tarleton has talked about doing with this property is potentially creating some incubation space for new life sciences companies. That's an amazing story. That is a really, really good thing to be having happen in your backyard. Some of these other acquisitions have also got life sciences stories. I won't go into all of them right now. The other couple of things that I do want to point out, though, this one right here, this is the 2 parcels that are going to make up our next residential development. As I mentioned, we're working furiously with the developer right now on finalizing the plans. That, as I mentioned, their original entitlement was done over 10 years ago. The design's getting updated a little bit. The need for space and the type of space configuration for residential has changed, and the developer also needs to be responsive to the current challenges in the market with both labor and materials costs. And so there's a little bit of redesign work going on, but we're expecting that they'll have that wrapped up in the next couple of months, and that we will be seeing some activity on that site very soon. Hacienda Lakes, another great story. This was recently acquired by Stanford. Again, practice of health expansion in the Tri-Valley. Folks, we have a lot to thank for Stanford. Stanford has done some enormous good in the community, not just as a good corporate citizen, but just as somebody who's really interested in investing and expanding their presence in the area and being able to expand the practice of health in some really interesting ways. I want to give a shout out to both Rick Shumway, the CEO, and John Sensiba on the board of directors for Stanford Valley Care, because they are really providing a lot of inspiring new ideas and putting into place some pretty exciting things. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the weeks and months to come. The other interesting sale here is Arroyo Center. We just sold a pair of buildings to the school district who will be moving their administrative offices over. But the other kind of component of this that I want to kind of talk about is this mix of investment sale versus user sale. Because one of the things that has evolved in Hacienda over time, originally we were all investment, well, I shouldn't say that. We've had owner users in the past. And by owner user, what I mean is the owner both owns and uses the property. But we have seen a gradual increase to the point now where about 50% of the acquisitions in Hacienda are owner user and 50% are investment. Now, little quick asterisk on that. That includes residential properties as well. I haven't had a chance to go back and unbundle that figure, but I would guess, just kind of based on a quick look, that if you were to just look at the office side of things or the non-residential side of things, you would see a fairly similar pattern. The other thing I always like to kind of throw out here is assessed valuation. Again, our data lags a little bit here, so we're only reporting up to 2020, 2021. We haven't gotten some of the current information back from the city and the assessor's office. But the good news is, we've had a couple little dips, but the evaluation is strong. And this is, again, reflective of the fact that we're seeing a lot of sales activities. I think people recognize the value in the area and they're responding in kind. This is also a very important number for the city of Pleasanton because property taxes from Hacienda are a big component of what goes into the city general fund. Before I get into trends, let me pause for a second. Any questions before I move on?
I had a question, James. Do you know if Shackley intends to relocate within Pleasanton or if they're just going, a lot of remote jobs, and do you know anything about that?
I do not know. My sense of it is, they were barely present in their last days. Okay. I have a feeling that I'm guessing, and this is be worth what you paid for it, but my guess is that they're moving more to a remote work model.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
James, would you comment on the school district's purchase? That is a huge purchase for administration, and seems like they're going into the rental business.
Well, yes and no. So a couple of things, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the school district, but I have understood from some components of, there's a bigger picture here, right? There's likely surplus property downtown. They have some buildings downtown that are in severe need of renovation. The potential sale of property on some of the downtown parcel more than covers their acquisition in Hacienda and other things that they want to be able to accomplish. I'll let you discuss that with the school district, whether you think that's a good use or a good strategy for them or not. I think within Hacienda, we're certainly very comfortable. It's an administrative use. They're going to be operating offices, so it's great. They will not be displacing any tenants. So there's a 2-building complex that they purchased. The other building is occupied by a company that used to be called Gatan. They've been acquired several times now, and I can't keep up with their name changes. But so we still call them Gatan. They're a fascinating company. They are in the business of developing electron microscopes. And they are very much at the forefront of a lot of really interesting research that was very active. And they were very actively involved in doing research on COVID when the pandemic first started. They recently renewed their lease, so they're not going away anytime soon. So the school district really isn't displacing anybody. And at the moment, I think over time they may phase some of that out. We'll see. I think it depends a little bit upon what they decide to do with the program for the rest of the site. The building that they moved into was empty. So again, no tenant displacement, and they're bringing in an administrative function. From our standpoint, all good.
Any other questions? I think you're clear.
Okay. So let me, and I've hinted at a few of my next slides, but I want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper on sort of what we see as being trends. And again, there's nothing I would say. I don't have a lot of specific data to back up some of these things, except that we see it happening a lot. And so we'll tease that out a little bit as we go forward. So one thing that is absolutely something that's been happening over the last 20 plus years is we are evolving into more of a mixed use transit oriented development. Again, the pandemic notwithstanding and the changes that are likely to be occurring in office and work, I think we're really well positioned to respond to that. There's, again, a lot of things still to be decided, but I think by bringing living and working closer together, we create an environment that's going to remain in demand for the foreseeable future. Not only that, because of the community amenities and the regional amenities and the types of things that we are bringing together in a mixed use environment, we think that we have a very, very desirable component. I would just say that, again, the activity that we've seen over this last year particularly seems to bear this out. There are definitely trends towards bringing living and working closer to home. We think that we can accommodate that very well, and to the extent that the home place becomes a workplace, we think we can also accommodate that too. So again, hybrid seems to be very much on people's minds, and I think we are very much a hybrid environment, and I think we're going to be able to be very responsive to those types of trends. So I mentioned life sciences, it's a thing, and I'm going to defer to Daniel and his group. They've been doing some outstanding reporting on this. If you haven't read the Mirador report, you should. There is some very, very exciting news, and the work that Mirador Capital and that Tri-Valley Ventures are doing to help nurture and really promote this is nothing short of fascinating and really, really good news. The other thing that is really terrific about our area is that we've got a lot of people who are basically serial entrepreneurs who live in this area. And, I would say in some respects, that's kind of the holy grail, right? You want your business leaders to be located and committed to the area in which they have their businesses. And we're seeing more of that. Unchained Labs, Tim Harkness is the CEO, lives in Pleasanton. Viva, also the CEO, I'm sorry, I just blanked on the name, but I'll get it in a second.
Peter Gassner.
Thank you, Peter Gassner, also a Pleasanton resident. So this is great. This is really, really good. It talks again, people don't make those types of commitments if the area is not worth it. They are making those commitments because they know it is.
You talk about this, James, internally. We kind of talk about this as like you had the PayPal mafia, right? Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, all these guys that broke off. We kind of have the Tri-Valley mafia of these mature companies spawning off these, entrepreneurs that are going and starting small companies that turn into big companies, right?
Yes, and it's continuing. I would also say, not just in life sciences, but I would say our capacity to grow and incubate businesses is still very, very good. A lot of our activity in Hacienda this year is local. Vigaro is a local company that moved to Hacienda. Unchained Labs, a local company that moved to Hacienda. We have some other announcements. Oh, Prosumnus, another company that was in Hacienda that's growing in Hacienda. We'll have some other announcements before the end of the year about other companies that are, again, homegrown, growing in the area. Healthcare, as I mentioned again, the practice of healthcare is absolutely a strong component in this area. You've seen over the last 5 or 6 years the larger healthcare institutions making significant investments in the area. Again, Stanford, I think, has been a leader in that, and that's really good. I think there's a need for those types of services. They provide an important community function, and so it's good to see them growing, and we're glad to be able to help provide them a home. I'd like to, this is a little bit self-serving, but I'm going to point this out anyway. One of the other trends that we do see is adaptive reuse. And if I was going to really be more honest with this slide, I'd be talking about life sciences again, because one of the things that's fascinating about some of our older buildings that we built for AT&T back in the 80s is that they're now having a wonderful third life as life sciences buildings. And it's really interesting. There's been a lot of focus on the 1- and 2-story tilt buildings that were constructed for AT&T back in the early days when AT&T was our first tenant. They had a second life, I'm going to say, towards the late 80s, early 90s, when we built the AT&T campus and moved them all out of those buildings. There was actually a fair amount of good demand for these, kind of Class B flex buildings. My favorite example of that would be Computerland. The Tauschers, purchased 2 buildings in Hacienda, and that was a perfect use for them. And we actually saw that type of sort of office flex use in a lot of those buildings. Now it looks like we have a life sciences story to tell here. We had some really interesting discussions with tenants about life science occupancy in some of these buildings recently. I'll give you one quick story. There was one of the older AT&T buildings was being examined. One of in many cases when you're doing light manufacturing and assembly and in the life sciences industries, you need a fairly tall ceiling height. And in some cases, our buildings didn't quite have the ceiling heights that you need for some of the activities that were proposed to be housed in the buildings. We actually had one tenant that moved pretty far down the investigative process, looking at actually raising the roof on one of these buildings to be able to occupy it. It didn't happen, but they didn't blink twice about looking at what they would need to do to move into this location. So that's a good thing. Let me talk about this building. This building was purchased by Access Community Health several years ago. I am so proud of this project. This again was one of those single-story tilt buildings that was built for AT&T back in the day. It is now a community health clinic serving in a very, very important function within the community. And in interest of full disclosure, for those who don't know, I'm on the board of directors for Access Community Health. This is an amazing organization. If you ever get a chance, go over and tour the facility, and you will see state-of-the-art health being practiced right in our backyard for the people who need it the most. The other trend that I mentioned previously, owner users, that is a thing. And we're going to see, I think, some more of that. We have a lot of users who are purchasing facilities, really kind of an interesting kind of dynamic there. The brokers hate owner users because it means there's less space for them to be able to lease. The owner users tend to be more stable tenants, a little bit more long-term interest, not always the case, but frequently the case. And we're starting to get a very strong population of owner users within Hacienda. And then we have our adaptive reuse life science owner users. And I'm kind of being silly here because some of the things that I'm commenting on, you will have, single tenants who are, kind of check a number of boxes. And Viva is a perfect example of that. Great adaptive reuse of an older building. The story I was in, they've been here for a long time. This is an old story, but if you haven't heard it before, this was a 2-story tilt building that was built by Britannia Business Developments back in the day. It's seen a couple of different tenants. When Viva purchased the building for their use, they went in and did an amazing overhaul. If you walk inside that building, you will think you've walked into South of Market. I mean, it's a very, very hip, urban, kind of design. Really great. The employees love working there. They've got great amenities on site. So great reuse of an existing building, life science related tenant, and also an owner user. So again, part of our trend going forward. And then, of course, residential. And as I said, we are very much, since, people always say, well, to sort of extent, we've been mixed use for a long time now. As many of you know, when Hacienda was first planned, it was going to be all office, a little bit of retail and a little bit of flex. But over time, that's changed, and we now have a substantial residential component that is going to continue. I think it's a really good thing. Again, I think it helps it will help to keep Hacienda relevant as a location, and I think bodes well for being able to create a truly supportive economy in the long term. Okay, I'm going to pause for a breath here. That's the last of my slides. Let's talk. I'll let you get in a word in edgewise here. What else can I tell you? What other questions can I answer?
James, what is the residential value compared with the rest of Pleasanton?
Oh, I don't. The truthful answer is I don't know. I will tell you a couple of things that I do know, though. I mean, it's the median home price in Pleasanton's nuts high. Now we're building slightly different products, but I think that's a good thing because we're actually building in a niche that is probably undersupplied in Pleasanton. I'll give you an example of the project over on West Las Positas we built a couple of years ago called Indaris. Which is a basically kind of townhome condominium style project. Those units were selling in the mid-8s when they got released. They couldn't build them fast enough. It was sold. I mean, as soon as a unit came online, it was sold immediately. I mean, so there's a really strong demand for that. So that the price on those units was that the median home price in Pleasanton wasn't as high as it is now. But still, comparatively, it was a great deal, and there was certainly a demand for that type of housing. And those are great units. I mean, they're most of the floor plans I think are all over 2,000 square feet. So you've got a great kind of starter home there. So I do know our rents are probably medium plus in terms of what you would see in other rental properties. But again, we've got a newer product and also probably larger sized units compared to a lot of other Pleasanton rental too. So that's as far as I can go at this point.
James, do you know how many buildings or how much office square footage is currently on the market within Pleasanton, so we can expect more hands changing?
Well, that's a great question. I do not know what's currently available on the Pleasanton market, but you know what? There is so much off-market activity happening right now too. It's crazy, and so and actually, I mentioned we've had 8 sales so far. We're actually about to close on a 9th. Within the next 60 days, and that one I think was almost completely off market. So it's a little bit hard to say. Then on top of that, just to further complicate the matter, you have these large corporations that still haven't entirely decided what they're going to do with their property or how to dispose of it. And I think that's going to be something that's really important to watch. And so Oracle is the perfect example of that. Oracle Corporation is going through a huge reorganization on their real estate. I mean, their real estate holdings, both leased and owned, are enormous. And there's a lot of change happening there right now. What does that mean for the Pleasanton campus? We don't know. And so I think there's a lot of question marks about that. Kaiser, same thing. They still have not done a big wholesale return to work yet. That campus is still largely vacant, but they have expressed no interest in letting it go. I think they're still trying to figure out what their future work model is going to be. And I think there's other things that are kind of fall in that same boat there.
Hey, James, thanks again for joining us. What is the new tenants coming to town? Are they coming from the Valley? Are they coming from out of state? They coming from Stockton?
They're homegrown. That's what the point I was trying to make earlier. A lot of our activity, the bulk of our activity, has been local. And by local, I mean really within the Tri-Valley. But in our case, Unchained Labs is moving from Bernal Center over to Hacienda. That's a very hyper-local move. We've had growth with companies that have been within Hacienda. Kimley Horn, engineering company, recently expanded their office presence within Hacienda. Convergent is in the process of expanding. Prosumnus, great story there, also in the process of expanding. Vigaro, relocation and expansion from Dublin. So again, most of the, and it's really funny because, a lot of times, and we have seen this in the past, when the economy starts to get overheated in other areas of the Bay Area, it has pushed a little bit of a flight to quality out to the Tri-Valley. This time, with things starting to get a little bit softer, there's another question: do we see a different type of flight to quality out to the Tri-Valley? Again, really hard to know, but again, most of our activity is local.
Just one other follow-up.
Yeah.
I know with all the people working from home and office space, in San Francisco, the Salesforce building is going to become vacant, or change of use, I guess. Is that happening to Oracle or Workday or any of those in our area?
Again, we don't know yet. Yeah. We don't know yet. And I like I said, I really do believe it's going to take another 3 to 5 years to sort of see what the new normal is going to be. There are just so many dynamics, and managing, the tricky part is that, the dynamics of managing a large single-use campus are so different than, you or I going into, well, not you so much, but but me going into my small office, it's a very different game. I was going to say, we have all this activity going on. The buildings are still very empty right now. We are starting to see more return to office, and we're seeing some more activity, people starting to kind of get back into the groove a little bit more, which is really, really good news. We're very excited about that. But I think we've still got a ways to go to sort of figure out how a lot of things play out.
Awesome. And you said, what anniversary is this for Hacienda?
It's 40th.
And have you been there the whole time?
I have been here for 37 of the 40 years.
Awesome. Appreciate all you do, buddy.
Thank you.
Hey, James, this is Ginny, and I have a question.
Yeah.
About restaurants. So,
yes.
Not counting restaurants that are within large companies that are there for their employees, and of course, the 2 strip mall areas on Hop Yard. Like, I remember Sweet and Savory was a great place. They're gone. Like, how many standalone restaurants do you have within the business park for, office people to go to for lunch?
Actually quite a few, and yeah. I wish I could give you a real number, and I don't. I should know that, and I don't. But I will. Let me do what every great politician does, and answer the question that I would like to answer, rather than the one that you're actually asking, which is, one of the great things that happened during the pandemic is we didn't lose a lot of restaurants. And in fact, we actually have some new restaurant activity in Hacienda, which is really great news. Not only that, we opened up 2 small footprint grocery stores in the last year, which both have grab and carry, food as a component of the business. So there's stuff happening, and I really do. I just threw government under the bus. Let me actually praise what the city of Pleasanton did during the pandemic. You can only do so much, and there are limitations. But I really do think the city economic development department, and the other groups like the chambers and other business groups really did an incredible job of working together to try and provide support where it was possible. And I think we actually were able to save a lot of businesses, and a lot of credit has to go to the landlords too. There were a lot of workouts to be able to retain tenants. And it's not magic. It's the fact that, it costs a lot more to lose and replace a tenant than it does to try and figure out how to keep them. And so I think everybody understood that they were in a very unusual circumstance, and they pulled together to make it work. And I think we benefited from that cooperation. So retail not looking too bad at the moment. We still got a couple of question marks, but again, we're cautiously optimistic there. And
James,
I'll get the number of restaurants for you and respond.
Thanks, James. I
James?
appreciate it.
James, speaking of restaurants, is there any interest in the former Red Robin and the former Foz?
Yes, actually, an announcement will be made on the Foz actually has a new operator. They will be doing a name you will know, and that will be announced probably shortly after the first of the year. So we're very excited about that. Red Robin, a lot of good tire kicking, nothing firm on that one yet. The good news is that pad is owned by Brixmor, which also owns the part of Metro 580 that doesn't have the Walmart. And they are very, very good. These guys are amazing about, repositioning property and going out and finding tenants. As you know, these things take a while sometimes, but we have seen some activity on the Red Robin restaurant. And so hopeful that we will get a new tenant in there before too long.
Hey, James, Ron Capella.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. You had mentioned the Avalon Bay project that's going to be starting off at the first of the year. That's the first larger scale project on the residential side that we've seen start up over there since Summerhill Homes did that project over on Las Positas. Is there other residential projects of any scale that's in the pipeline now?
There is, we have some little tiny shoots of ideas that are starting to emerge. And so again, the Avalon Bay project it got entitled a long time ago. It's just finally starting to move forward. We have no other projects that are moving through the entitlement process yet, but there are some very active discussions, mostly related to the housing element update. So we have 5 sites within Hacienda that are looking at housing as an opportunity, potentially over the long haul at their locations. There's one of those sites that is actively working on a project right now, a really interesting one. If it moves forward, it'll be great. But it's still very early days. There's a lot of work that's still, underlying work that has to do in order to be able to get that to happen, not the least of which is the site's got to get rezoned. We have some internal approval that has to happen amongst our ownership before a residential project can get approved on any site. But it looks fairly promising. And I think, we have some things that we're excited that we think will move forward with, conceivably within the next year and a half or so.
That's great, because all the projects that we've done over the years, a lot of commercial stuff, but on the residential side for the Ilmeti family and Avalon Bay, and all the work we've ever done is either sold or rented out fast, and I'm just surprised that more builders, national builders have not discovered that I'm in the rough of Hacienda Business Park, so yeah.
Well, we think we have a good opportunity to. Of course, the dynamics over the last couple of years, both with the cost of labor and the cost of materials, have been very, very challenging. And in fact, one of the current sort of exercises I mentioned that Avalon Bay is going through is, really looking at the construction form for the buildings, because they need to make it a little bit more economical. Even though we've got pretty strong rent activity right now, and I'm really kind of talking more on the rental side right now, not so much on the sales side. I think, personally, I think you could build anything for sale and you would be able to sell it at this point. The demand is still strong. Even with the current changes in the market rate, I realize interest rates are kicking everybody's tail right now. But that'll go down again. And I still think there's going to be a very, very strong demand for even for sale housing. But on the rental side, the good news is that there are good ways to construct those buildings, and even in today's environment of labor and materials. And I think, we will see some more activity in that area.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Are there any other questions here in the room, or James, can you unshare your screen, please?
Oh, yes, of course.
Any other questions from anybody online? All right. Well, thank you very much, James. What a wonderful presentation. really, and for all the time you put in, all your commitments to the city, to economic development. I mean, we really, really appreciate all you've done for us. I just now, Lori, are you still on there? Is Lori still on?
Yes.
I am, and my other meeting went away, so.
Okay,
Background
so,
noise.
Lori, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to you if you want to take us through to the end of the meeting.
Yeah, so just to wrap up again, thank you, James, for giving us that great update, and for everybody in the meeting today, either at the chamber offices or virtually. Remember, we do have these great presentations once a month. We keep looking for ideas that are going to impact our business community and the Vision 2025 that the helps guide some of the chamber actions. And so I want to encourage everybody to continue to participate.
So then I'd like to go ahead and offer the topics for the rest of the year, Lori. So
perfect, that'd be great.
So our next meeting in November, we're going to have Tracy Lewis Taylor from Stanford Medical. She's going to be our presenter. And then Omron Robotics, the new president of Omron Robotics, is our December presenter. So we're going to keep these meetings at noon through the rest of the year. We're also, as an organization, going to be doing some strategic planning here at the beginning of December. And so in that effort, we'll be talking about our committees, potentially if there's going to be other time changes or any change to how the committees function. But as you are all members of this committee and this organization, you're more than welcome to weigh in with your thoughts on how this committee operates, what kind of speakers would we have, things of that nature. So please let us know.
And I want to put in a plug for James as you're talking to some of these exciting new tenants and expansion going on at Hacienda. If you have a new tenant showing up that you think the community should get to know, let us know. Reach out to us. Let us know if you think you could give us a contact that maybe could give one of these forum presentations. That would be awesome.
That's great.
And encourage them to join the chamber.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Always.
Did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did two things. One, absolutely, I'd be glad to do that. And I got several thoughts that I'll share with James later on. I just, before we got offline, I really wanted to just say thank you again. Seriously, and I mean this. The reason I show up to work every day is because I get a chance to work with all of you. And you know, the heart of the community and the heart of what has made Hacienda possible has been from working with folks like you. And I really just appreciate those the ability to interact with you and to work with you always. And back at me, if there's anything we can do for you, you guys, I think all have my contact information. If anything that you need from Hacienda, or if you have any questions or anything about what's going on, feel free to call me or reach out anytime. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you, James.
Thank
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Okay, Lori, I think that takes us to the end. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, November 12th at 12 noon. And unless there's any other final comments, this meeting is adjourned.
I think we're good. Have a great rest of everyone's day.
All right.
Great meeting, James. Great presenter.
It makes it easy. I just said, all I do is hit play.
Yeah.
So you see how valuable he is and how he's really irreplaceable. I don't know who could step into his shoes. Believe me, I've thought about